Okay. All right. So I want to welcome everybody. My name is Evan Adler. I am a physical therapist with UNC Therapy Services. And you are now attending Therapy Thursday. So welcome today. Today I get to be your MC, your host, and your presenter. So I'm very excited to have this opportunity to talk to everybody. Didn't know how many people we were going to get, but it looks like some people are jumping on in here, so this is great. Therapy Thursday is brought to you by UNC Therapy Services and the Community Engagement Committee. And what we do is we try to help out the community as best we can. Of course, now with COVID, it's not as hands-on as it was, but we're still trying to provide information and help, and without having you to come in for PT, but kind of see what PT can help you with, and just provide this as a service to our community. So today, I'm going to go ahead and share my my presentation. Okay. Bloop. All right. Can everybody see the presentation there? Can I get some thumbs up? All right. Awesome. Great. Okay. Cool. So. Today, we're going to be talking about Resolution Running 2021. We are getting out of that 2020 slump and getting ourselves back on the road. I think we can all agree that 2021 has been a little stressful so far of the past week and certainly the past day. So lots of resolutions are being made, but this is really to get ourselves back on the road. And we're going to talk about a bunch of things today. So first, let me tell you a little bit more about myself. My name is Evan Adler, physical therapist. I'm clinic coordinator here at the UNC Wellness Center Physical Therapy Clinic in Northwest Cary. I'm a board certified orthopedic specialist, certified in Graston technique for instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization and dry needling. Originally from New York, but I've been down here in North Carolina for a dozen years now, so it's really home. And I'm an avid runner and sometimes cyclist, music enthusiast, and proud husband and dad of two awesome boys. One of them who's on the video there. I see him there. Hey, buddy. And one dog and two bunnies. So we've got quite the crazy house. So our objectives today, we're going to talk about what proper running form is, and I purposely put that in quotes. We're going to talk about some factors to increase your running efficiency, address safe, appropriate mileage progression, talk about some best practices for injury-free running, and we're going to talk about the importance of the kinetic chain. And lastly, we're going to talk about some prevention strategies, talk about my favorite strengthening and stretching exercises to help you become a better runner. So first, let's just talk about prevalence of some running injuries. Okay, we want to get you back out on the road, but we want to get you out there safely. 60 to 80% of runners experience some level of injury every year. I know I recognize a few names out there, and I know that some injuries have gone along with them. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. Most running injuries are musculoskeletal overuse injuries, and due to that cumulative overload of the lower extremities, right? Running, what is it? 1 foot in front of the other, over and over and over and over and over again for miles on miles. There's nothing that fits the definition of an overuse repetitive injury like running. And 70 to 80% of all these injuries occur from the waist down, right? Makes sense, right? We're hitting the ground, the shock waves are coming up from the ground, up the chain, and you're going to get your injuries from there, moving their way on up. So the bottom line is that running is a great form of exercise. I'm an avid runner. I love it myself. But there are always risks for injury. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of those things today and how to try to avoid them and and become a better, more efficient runner. Okay, let's talk about proper running form, and I very much use that in quotations. Okay, proper or correct running form is a fallacy. Okay, there is no such thing as a proper or correct form. Okay, I run a lot on the tobacco trail, and I see lots of people out there, and everyone looks different. Okay, and they should, because we are all different people, different structures, body shapes, types, ability levels. Okay, I would not expect an elite athlete to have the exact same running form as someone who's running for the first time and trying one of those couch to 5K programs, or someone who's rehabbing from an injury who may not have the same abilities. It's just not realistic. So it's really important to recognize that your running form is going to be best for you. Now, we can make wonderful tweaks and certain adjustments to make it more efficient, but everyone has to have their own running style. So a couple of pictures that I have up there. The guy on the bottom is just some stock photo that I found of a sprinter. Okay, you can see that his line of his body as compared to the ground is a much more acute line than Meb up top. Many of you may know who Meb Flesky is. He's an amazing long distance runner, marathon champion, but he's one of the fastest long distance runners that there is. And the difference between those two running postures couldn't be more different. So it's important to realize that there is no correct running form. It's what is correct for your body. Okay. Now, what we base that proper running form for you is how efficient is your body going to be when you are running. So one thing that we refer to running is that our body becomes a human slingshot. Right, so we're this system of pulleys and levers. Our bones are moving so that the muscles are stretching, the tendons are stretching appropriately to build up that energy so that they can contract and then push us forward in the most efficient manner possible. Right, I do other talks where we talk a little more specifically about all this stuff, but this efficiency is based on that forward motion with using as little energy as possible, okay? Finding where that center of mass is, right? So your center of mass is located kind of where your belt buckle sits, and the intersection between that and about 2/3 back into your body, right? So most people kind of put their finger in their belly button when you say, where's your center of mass? Well, it's not really there. It's a little bit lower and a little bit further back, right? So we want to move that center of mass forward with as little energy as possible, with as little wasted energy as possible, right? So we'll talk a little bit later about what that means as far as using your glutes versus your quads and how to be efficient there. But the concept remains the same. We also want to make sure that there's energy absorption as we hit the ground, enough to contain that energy and then release it so that you can use it going forward again. Okay, so you'll hear a lot of people talk about making sure that you're not a big heel striker, right? Making sure that your leg is not in front of you so much that you land with a hard heel, which actually stops your motion. It slows down your motion so that you have to go over that breaking point in order to produce more energy to get to the next step, okay? And then landing with your foot slightly anterior to your center of mass, right? So your center of mass, if you drop that line straight down, you want to land slightly in front of it, but you're already in your motion as you're running. So if you take a look at that kind of three guys in sequence there, you can see that first guy is landing Now, I don't know if he landed with a foot strike or not, or a heel strike, but he's kind of straight up and down for his lower leg, slightly in front of where we talked about that center of mass to be. As he translates forward, now his leg is bending and driving back behind him. And when you get to that takeoff, he has extended his hip to push back behind him to drive that center of mass forward. And we're going to talk about some vertical displacement, some vertical oscillation in a moment. But I like this picture because you can see that those three pictures there, those heads, are really kind of at the same level, right? They're not bobbing up and down so the horizon is bouncing all over the place, because that's a good sign of some wasted motion. Okay. Oh, perfect. I don't remember my own presentation. So eliminating that wasted energy, right? So we're talking about this minimizing that vertical displacement. Okay, you can kind of think of it like a sine wave, right? Up and down, up and down, up and down, right? So you want that horizon to be as steady as possible. So a high vertical oscillation, you're just bouncing all around the place, okay? With that low vertical oscillation, you're keeping things nice and steady, nice and aligned. Okay. Now we can often connect these to whether you are more of a quad dominant runner or a glute dominant runner. Okay. So your quads are the muscles on the front of your thighs, right? And then your glutes are the technical name for your butt muscles. Okay, so those of you who know my run with your butt talk will know a lot of these concepts. So we've already talked about the glutes and how they will help to extend your hip back behind you to drive your center of mass as forward and level as possible, right? Eliminating that wasted energy. So if you have too much of that quad activation, that quad dominance, okay, your quads specialize in extending your knee. So if you hit the ground and most of your force is extending your knee, you're going to end up pushing yourself up as opposed to pushing yourself back. So as we're running, we want to make sure that we're getting that good balance, that good push. So you're driving back behind you, pushing yourself forward to eliminate that wasted energy. Okay. Now, we also like to talk about this kind of quicker turnover as we're running. Okay, and this idea of the ideal or a proper cadence as we're running. Okay, so there's a lot of research out there, and there's this very popular target, this magical of 180 beats per minute. Okay, I know a lot of people talk about that. So if you were to set a metronome to 180 beats a minute, 90 steps per leg per minute, right? You get this really fairly quick turnover. Okay, I don't think it's reasonable to think that we can all hit 180. It's just not. I've done labs. I've tried it myself. And it's just it's not attainable for a lot of people. Now, I've seen people run at a 220 BPM and they look like hummingbirds just as they go by. But not, everybody is different. So what I really implore of my patients, my runners, is that you need to figure out what kind of where your cadence is. There was a question just came in: is that 180? Is that each foot strike? So yes, 1 beat per foot strike. So that magical 180 would end up being 90 per side per minute. So, for instance, I run at a pretty steady 155 beats per minute. Okay. Now, if I wanted to increase my turnover a little bit, I would not want to jump all the way up to 180 because I would be totally gassed and my mechanics would be completely off. So what they do recommend is an increase of about 10%. Now, and through some really nice studies, we've seen that about a 10% change will give us some huge benefits, particularly decreasing the amount of ground force reaction that you get when you hit the ground. You can change a heel striker to a midfoot striker real quick just by changing up their cadence just a little bit, just by that 10%. So for me, if I were doing 155 and I only wanted to go up that 10%, I'm only talking about 15 beats per minute, and I'm only getting up to 170, right? Still shy of that 180. So again, I feel like that's a fallacy. It's overemphasized, okay? Each person is individual in that regard. All right. So let's talk about when we're trying to get back out there. Safe, appropriate mile progression. Now, so the general guidelines that we see out there is to increase your weekly mileage volume by no more than 10%. Okay, so 10%. And to remain there for about 2 to 3 weeks before increasing again. So this really applies to more experienced runners that have a higher weekly mileage, 25 miles a week or above. Folks just getting out there to start with, let's say you're only running a mile at a time. Well, 10% of that, it's only a tenth of a mile. I mean, it's kind of a balance issue there of how much you're actually going to progress. So I think it's probably better to go more off of time if you're first starting, as opposed to mileage. If you're comfortable running out there for 10 to 15 minutes, right? Increase by a couple of minutes to meet that 10 to 15% increase. For about 2 weeks, and then increase from there. Now, when you are more of a beginner, start with running maybe, I've seen it at 1 to 4 miles, 2 to 3 days a week. Now, for a beginner to go out there and run 4 miles, that's super impressive. So don't hold yourself to super, super high standards. You just want to get out there and really just to start doing it. So if you're going 1 mile, great. Do it a couple days a week, and then you start to progress slowly, right? Add in another quarter mile, right? If you're doing a mile, and keep it there for about a week to 2 weeks before you add more. Okay, that's going to be the safest progression. Now, there are a lot of programs out there for run walking, which I love. If this is something where you can't handle the impact on your joints, let's say you've got some bad knees, some arthritic knees, or you have some chronic pain issues, some fibromyalgia, things like that. Trying to do this run walk progression just to get yourself moving, I think is fantastic. So the same rules apply as far as the progression, but you're gonna start with running at a very low level. Your walking is going to be a lot higher. So there's a sample program that I have there, and you've got, the first week you're going 2 minutes of running, 4 minutes of walking. And then you're starting to kind of join, come to the middle, right? So you're going to go 3 and 3, 4 and 2, and start to build up the running and decrease the walking. Now, as things start to get bigger and bigger, you'll increase the amount of walking as well. But over time, you should be able to transition into more of that run as you're able to tolerate it, right? So you're trying to train your body to transition and accept the movements of running, right? And build up your endurance to tolerance to greater impact, right? The movements of running, every step that we take running is 3 to 4 times your body weight's impact, as opposed to walking, which is just one time per foot, right? So every time you land on a foot when you're running, you have all that extra pressure going through your joints, and you need to be able to make sure that it is appropriate for you. So that's why we recommend this safe, appropriate progression. Okay, let's talk about some warm up and cool down. As I was grabbing some images for this, I found out that KFC makes a fire log that smells like fried chicken. So if you have not used up all of your gift cards from the holiday, I highly recommend not getting that at all. Please don't, save yourself. So anyhow, so warm up and cool down is a very important concept for adaptation for your body, right? You want to really transition your body from this anaerobic to this aerobic exercise. Okay, so anaerobic means that you're really not using as much oxygenated blood, right? You're using, these are more your power muscles, right? As opposed to aerobic exercise where you get that fresh oxygenated blood and you need to really get everything pumping so you can go for a little more distance. Okay, different muscle types, and that's a little deeper for this talk today. Okay, but lost my track for a moment. Okay, so at the bottom there you have a little bit of that dynamic warm up before. So there's a lot of talk about stretching. What should I do before or after? So a dynamic warm up before is preferred. Okay, so dynamic means that you're not just standing still and holding a stretch. Okay, so for a runner, if you were going to do let's say you're going to do a quad stretch, a typical quad stretch where you're kind of holding your heel up to your butt to stretch that front of your thigh. I wouldn't recommend actually doing that before you start to exercise. Okay, the research shows that it's really not all that beneficial in injury prevention. So better to do more of a dynamic warm-up. So instead of doing that, do some butt kicks. So you're actively using your hamstrings, which is the opposite muscle of your quads, to give a quick stretch of your quads to get them warmed up, get them loosened up, right? So we want to do these specific warm-up exercises to really let your body know that you're about to exercise. Okay, so that's what we want to do. We really want to just prep the body. We want to prep the muscles. We want to prep the neurological system. Say, hey, all right, wake up. We're ready to do this. Try not to break anything as we're doing it. And here we go. Okay, so now once you've done your exercises, you return back to it and you want to cool down, right? You want to get back to this pre-exercise state without a hard stop. You don't want to just run, and then boom, hit the car and drive home. You want to take a little bit, you want to cool down, let the heart start to, the heart rate come down a little bit. And this is also a good time to do your static stretches. This is where that nice warm muscle can really benefit from a prolonged stretch position. This is where you can do that quad stretch or just a typical hamstring stretch, standing in one position and letting things stretch along. Okay. Now, your cool down of doing some extra walking or a little light running afterwards is also a really good way to add some overall mileage to your run, especially if you're looking to increase the amount that you're doing. It totally counts. It doesn't have to just be in your run to count for that mileage or that time. Okay, your warm up, your cool down totally applies there. Just ask Jack; he could use a little warm up down there. Okay. So let's talk about some best practices for injury-free running. Okay, so if this were an in-person presentation, I would ask people to raise their hands to say who has had a running injury in the past 5 years. But given this view right here, I can't see your pictures anyway. So I'll just say that, okay, so who's had a running injury in the past 5 years? I know I have. A couple of times through there, and I'm assuming that a lot of people do, which is why you're here today. So 37 to 56% of recreational runners get injured every year. We love running, and we are just absolutely gluttons for punishment, because I know very well the one thing you can't tell a runner is not to run. You're going to run through it until you just can't. And that's where we come in. That's where PT really fits into this, because we can help. We are the movement experts. We can take a look. We can see what your running gait is like and break things down and say, okay, well, something's going on here. And, we need to figure this out, right? Your hip looks like this. Your back looks like this. This is going this way. We can make those tweaks to get you out of there. All right. So let's. All right. We'll go on. Okay. So let's talk about one of the most important concepts that I have here for runners. Okay, is looking at that kinetic chain. Okay, it's that balance of stability and mobility. Okay, it's always this balance. Do you have enough strength and enough flexibility in the right places? Right. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And even that single step of 1,000 miles can lead to great injury if we aren't utilizing that chain properly. Okay. So I love that image there because it builds from the bottom up, right? We're talking about the foot itself, right? Below the ankle should be a stable joint. It should act as a rigid lever to really load up energy, some shock absorption, and pushing off, right? It's like a loaded spring. That ankle should be more mobile, right? Multiplanar movement. You have to adapt to different terrain. That's where your ankles really come in and are really handy. Your knee should be a stable joint. It's a hinge joint. Okay, a lot of my patients know when I talk about it. The knee is a dumb joint. It's a hinge. That's all it does. Right? Anytime you introduce other motions into the knee that's not in that hinge type plane, you're going to have problems and you're going to end up seeing me, which is great for business, but I really don't want you in here if you don't have to be. Your hip is a mobile joint. It's a ball and socket joint, right? So you get a lot of rotation. You need to get a lot of extension in order to get those glutes to fire and drive that center of mass forward. Your lumbar spine should be good and stable. That's where your core strength comes in, right? And then your thoracic spine, where your ribs attach, that's where you need to be mobile because you need to be doing a lot of rotational motion above. We're like these gyroscopic beings as we're running, keeping ourselves upright as we go. All right. So one of my favorite books on this topic is called Anatomy for Runners by Jay Deshary. He is fantastic. I've seen him talk a few times, had some great conversations with him. And he highlights these 5 points in training that are super key. Okay. The first is your posture. And we're going to get into these in a minute here. Okay. But the posture of loading the spine to set up for dynamic stability, right? That core is super important, making sure that we're good and upright, but we're utilizing the muscles around it to propel forward. Okay. The ability to get your leg behind you, right? So making sure you have that hip extension, the ability to really extend that hip and drive backwards, having enough ankle flexibility so that you're able to flex your toes up towards you, to accept weight when you hit the ground, and then push off as you go. Adapting to the ground and stabilizing, right? So like we were just talking about, the ankle needs to be good and mobile, but really strong, because if you're running on roads always have, cracks and pops in them. If you're running, I love the story. A friend of mine was running the San Diego Rock and Roll Marathon, and she developed some ankle and some knee pain afterwards. And we tried to figure out, okay, so what happened? Well, she was running she was running towards the side of the road the entire time on the same side of the road. And all the roads there were cantered like this a little bit, just a little bit. So her ankles were all super stressed after running in that direction the whole time. So we figured out, okay, well, we got to run towards the middle in the future to make sure the ankles are better, right? But you could be running on trails, running on different terrains. So having that flexibility is important. Hip dominance we talked about, right? Using those glutes to drive behind you so you can run fast. And then your pattern replicates your unique structural alignment, right? No perfect, ideal, proper running form. Your form is your form, and your efficiency depends on that. And that's how we address all those issues. Okay. Are you strong enough to run? This guy is not. I doubt he has any hip extension at all. Or neck extension for that matter. My goodness. So I want to show you just a couple of quick tests that we use in the clinic to see if you have enough strength in your running. So I'm going to go ahead and I think I need to stop sharing this for a moment. Oh, wow. Well, we really got a lot of people today. That's fantastic. I didn't see that whole number until I just switched back. Cool. Good to see everyone. Hi. All right. So let's see. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to share my... I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. All right. So I'm going to click on over here this vertical compression test. Did YouTube come up for you guys? Can I get a... Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, so we're just going to go... Okay, so you can kind of see how this guy has his hips kind of tilted forward. His shoulders are back a little bit. Okay, so you're going to get this guy walking into frame in a moment, and he's going to push straight down. Okay, the metaphor they kind of use sometimes is putting a kettlebell on top of a soda can. Right? If you put a kettlebell right on top of a soda can, it should support it right on top. But if you're kind of all tilted back, it's going to crush boom, straight down to one side. Okay? So this is one way for us to test that vertical compression. All right. Squat with stick for spinal alignment. Okay, you're going to see him kind of squat on down here. Now, if they're trying to stop the butt wink, don't worry about that. You can laugh at it later. I like to every day. But what's really important here is that he's using that stick for spinal alignment, right? He's got the stick touching 3 points of his spine, or his back, right? He has it right at his sacrum, right between his shoulder blades, and at the back of his head. Those 3 points of contact ensure that he is in a good spinal alignment as he's doing it. All right, so a bridge to a single leg bridge, pretty self-explanatory. Oh, now I want to take a vacation. All right, so let's see if we go and jump ahead a little bit. He's going to go from 2 legs to 1 leg, I think. So he's going to give a good squeeze of his abs and good squeeze of his glutes coming up on 2 legs there. And you should be able to do the same thing, but with 1 leg. Because like we talked about before, running is a single leg exercise. You have to be able to do everything on 1 leg at a time. Okay, never at any point are you really on 2 legs when you're running. Okay, it's 1 leg or you're airborne. So we like to give a good look at what that single leg bridge looks like. Single leg squat. Now I put there single leg squat plus 200 pounds just to emphasize how much pressure is going through there when you do a single leg squat when you're running, right? So can you do a tremendous amount of single leg squats with a 200-pound vest on you? Probably not. But we like to see what that single leg squat looks like, what the alignment looks like. Are the hips dropping? Is the knee dropping in? All important things. And the last part is toe yoga, one of my favorite things. So this is to get dissociation between the great toe and the rest of the toes. Uh-oh, lost it. There she is. So watch here. So this great toe is your big toe, and watch how she's able to lift that big toe up on its own. That's pretty impressive, right? So to be able to have that amount of extension and control of that great toe gives you that much more control when you're hitting the ground and trying to push off from that toe as well. Okay, you need that amount of extension of that great toe as you're rolling through to push off to the next place. Now she's doing her lesser toes, a little harder. Tough stuff. It's a brain game is what it is. Okay. Oh boy. Where are we? Go. Okay, so let's get to my top strengthening exercises here. If you're on your computer, this would be a good time to take a quick screenshot. Although all of this will be available on our YouTube channel, hopefully later today, if not definitely by tomorrow. If you go back into the chat, you will find those links. So top strengthening exercises, that single leg bridge. I also like doing a squat with a band around your knees. That'll give you that activation of your lateral hip stabilizers, those glute muscles out there to ensure that you're good and level. A running man exercise. So basically going back and forth in that position from one side to the other, standing on one leg without the other leg touching. So you're basically making that running motion with your arms and legs while in that single leg balance. A dead bug is one of my favorite core exercises. So you've got legs and arms up straight in the air, and then you are extending one arm and one leg at the same time, keeping your back nice and flat, your core is engaged. And for runners, I like doing the same side. I like having like your left leg and left arm go at the same time, and then your right arm and your right leg go at the same time. I think it's a little more applicable to the running motion. Last one we have is that side plank with hip abduction, right? So we're not doing full out to feet. I think if you get it to the knee, that's enough. You get core, you get glute, you get lateral hip stabilizers. And if you can add in that abduction of that top leg, kind of this the Superman the starfish position here, you will feel a real burn on both the top and the bottom legs. All right, are you flexible enough? So, right, it's that balance of mobility and stability. So here are my top kind of in-clinic checks for flexibility, right? Ankle dorsiflexion. Are you able to bend your ankle enough, bringing those toes up towards you? So what I'll do is I'll kind of put a fist length away of your toe to the wall, and then ask you to bend your knee, and can you touch the wall without lifting your heel off the ground? Okay, if not, then you're missing some ankle mobility, and we need to address that a little further. Your hip flexors, so the muscles in the front of your hips, can be very tight and can prevent you from extending your leg behind you. So the picture on the top right there is called your Thomas test. So you're lying on a table and you're letting one leg drop in front of you. If you are anything less than perpendicular to the ground, then your hip flexors are probably pretty tight. A hamstring test, kind of lying on your back, holding your leg, and then extending your knee. You should be able to get your knee straight if you can. If not, you probably got some good hamstring tightness too. And then you're trying to see if that great toe is flexible enough as well. All right, so my top stretches. So your gastroc and your soleus, so those are two calf stretches, one for the big gastroc muscle in the back of your calf, and then the soleus is kind of runs underneath that big muscle and does not cross the knee. So if you do that stretch with a bent knee, you'll get your soleus muscle. Nice easy hamstring stretch with your heel up on a chair and leaning forward from the hips. Get those hamstrings stretched out. Now on the top right, she's doing a glute stretch, just trying to stretch out those butt muscles. Then the bottom, you've got a nice hip flexor stretch. You're stretching the one that's kneeled down on the ground. You got your abs are tight, your glutes are tight, and then you're just trying to lunge forward a little bit to get a stretch of the front of that hip. You got your traditional kind of quad stretch there. Make sure that you're not letting your knee kind of flare out to the side as you're doing it. You really want your knees kind of together to get the best application of that stretch. And then the last one there, you got a little lateral hip stretch for your IT band, your TFL. Trying to stretch out that side there. IT band syndrome, something we see a lot with runners, and that's just another topic for another day. So with all of that, if there are any questions, now would be a pretty good time to do that. We have just a couple of minutes left here. If you want to put them in the chat, I should be able to see them. I think we have time for a couple of questions. But before I answer any of those, I'm just going to put this up here, and just to let everybody know that, well, those are my two boys there. And one of the bunnies, I don't know which bunny that is. It doesn't really matter. They look exactly the same. So nobody's feelings are getting hurt. But there's my contact information there. So again, I'm here at the UNC Wellness Center at Northwest Cary, which is kind of like deep South Durham. We're about 10 minutes from the South Point Mall. And my email is there. If anybody has any questions after today and wants to send me a direct email, I'm happy to answer questions. And it's good to know that you do not need you do not need a referral for PT. I'll say that again. You do not need a referral for PT if you have commercial insurance, right? So unless you have Medicare or TRICARE for military stuff, you can just call and make an appointment and come on in. We can evaluate and treat orthopedic issues without that referral. So I think that's really important for my runners, my athletes to know that you can come straight on in as your direct care. Okay, so I need to go to sharing screen, stop sharing screen, look at the chat. Okay, so somebody asked me here, how often should we do the strength exercises and the stretching exercises? That's a fantastic question. So stretching can be an everyday thing. Not only can it be an everyday thing, it can be a twice a day thing if you want. You can overstretch, but you're probably not going to. So definitely once a day. And if you're running regularly, I would do them right after you run, right? Like we said before, you want to do those dynamic stretches beforehand, but you really want to do those static stretches afterwards. Now, the strengthening stuff that you're going to do, you probably want to do those every other day to every third day, okay? These muscles are going to get used. They're going to get sore. You're going to get that delayed onset muscle soreness if you're doing it right? Feels like you had a good workout. So you're targeting the right muscles, right? You need a day to recover from that, okay? So you do want to take a day off in between so you don't have to do those back-to-back days all the time. Okay. Other questions? Okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. But I want to thank everybody so much for coming out for this talk. I think it went really well. I like seeing some smiling faces out there. Like I said, I'm going to put this up on our YouTube channel. I encourage you to go and subscribe and watch it again if you want. You can slow it down and what have you. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your day and the weekend. Have a good one.